It is now 5:30 on February the 16th, 2023, which is the advertised time and day for this meeting of the Butte-Silver Zoning Board of Adjustment to begin, so I'll now call the meeting to order. I would first of all like to introduce the staff. The gentleman sitting at the table is Dylan Pipinich, the planning director. On Dylan's left is Lila Osborne, senior planner, and directly across from Dylan is Robin Smith, the administrative assistant, who will be keeping the minutes of this meeting for posterity. I'd also like to introduce the board tonight. On my far left is Garrett Craig, Sylvia Cunningham, John Reese. On my far right is Todd Collins, Lauren Burmeister. My name is Dave Wing, and I will be chairing the meeting tonight. There are no minutes that we need to approve at this meeting. I guess they'll be saved for the next meeting. So with that taken care of, I would now call for the first matter on the agenda, which is special or variance application 23-501. The variance application by Jack Skinner. Is Mr. Skinner our representative present? Okay, thank you. You can come up closer and there'll be a presentation and then you'll be given the opportunity to add whatever you might want to add. But first there'll be the presentation for the board. No, I don't. I mean, nobody's ever volunteered to do that before.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. The proposal for this variance is to locate an overhead garage door business in an R4 manufactured home zone, which would vary from the permitted uses of the R4 zone. Here's a site plan of the property. The municipal code lists the permitted uses in the R4, which are primarily residential and accessory uses. The proposed use, the overhead garage door business, is not outright permitted. The building that they're proposing to go in was constructed before the zoning ordinance was adopted in 1978. When pre-existing non-conforming structures stop operating for over 1 year, any new business which would be non-conforming must be reviewed by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Here's the zoning of the property. The brown is the R4, some C1, and then not zoned over here by the mine. And here's an aerial image. And here's some pictures of the building itself. This is just across the street. And then there are 3 variance criteria, which we'll go through now. The first is that a variance must not be contrary to the public interest. There are some commercial uses and the mine across Continental to the east. The uses immediately surrounding the property are residential. The building itself was constructed prior to 1978, and we know that it was at one time a mechanic shop, but we don't know if there were any other businesses. The overhead garage door business being proposed today would have normal business hours, and most of the work would be expected to take place within the building or off-site, but staff recommends that the board may consider conditions of approval to ensure normal business hours, and that all storage or business conducted outside would be screened from residential properties. These are standard considerations for commercial businesses in Butte-Silver, but can be discussed with the applicant tonight. Because of the long-time nature of this property being commercial and the low-impact nature of the proposed business, the proposal would likely not be contrary to the public interest. The imposition of conditions of approval to guarantee minimal disturbance to the neighborhood would be appropriate so long as they relate to the impacts associated with the business. The second criteria, a literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance must result in unnecessary hardship owing to the conditions unique to the property. We've quoted up here the facts of hardship as stated in the application. And staff would agree with the applicant that the property would likely be unusable without a commercial variance. And rather than forcing structures to remain vacant or be demolished, which would most likely be the case without a variance in this case, it may be appropriate to consider a commercial structure within a residential zone a hardship. The third criteria, the spirit of the zoning ordinance must be observed and substantial justice done. While the intent of the zoning ordinance is to restrict commercial development outside residentially zoned areas, it also states that if a non-conforming use within a structure or structures and premises in combination is discontinued or abandoned for any reason and is not rebuilt within 1 year, the structures and premises in combination shall not thereafter be used except in conformance with the regulations of the zone in which it is located unless a variance has been granted. The ordinance recognizes that the community has existing non-conforming structures and provides a path to maintain those without disrupting the character and the residents within those neighborhoods. Since the building has been vacant for over 1 year, the original commercial use would be void and any new commercial use would require review from the board. The proposal for an overhead garage door business here is similar in nature and scale to the original commercial intent and use of the structure. With appropriate conditions of approval agreed to by the applicant, the business should not be detrimental to the neighborhood. The circumstances of an existing commercial building located in a residential zone may represent a hardship, as literal enforcement of the ordinance would only allow property owners to use the structure for uses which are not feasible given the existing structure on the lot. Therefore, staff recommends that the board approve variance application 23-1.
Thank you, Lila. Do any board members have any questions of the staff?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Oh yeah, do you know when the last time a commercial, somebody operated out of the building?
Okay, Mr. Pipinich?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Burmeister, not really. There was an existing auto repair shop there for a long time. There had been a lot of cars and stuff there until recently. The previous owner was out of compliance with a lot of community enrichment standards and zoning standards before, and hasn't had a business license in quite a while, but there was obviously some business activity there. So in short, we don't have a definite date, but there's definitely been activity within the last couple of years.
One more. So you said this is pretty well fully surrounded by residential, but would it be fair to say that there are other commercial building or businesses interspersed throughout that corridor of Continental?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Burmeister, I would say that generally speaking, Continental Drive, the character of that is a mixed use nature. The immediately surrounding properties are residential, and kind of as Lila stated, I think the way the ordinance looks at these is we understand that it's a commercial building in a residential zone. You know, the ordinance acknowledges that there are quite a few of those. It's just that's when you have to look at each individual use to make sure that they're not more detrimental to the neighborhood than either what was there previously or what would not be acceptable to the surrounding neighbors.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other board members have any questions of the staff? Mr. Collins? Oh. Conditions?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Collins, I believe we had a couple recommended conditions of approval, but yeah, feel free to, if you feel the need to mitigate any other impacts that a garage door business may have on those surrounding residences, you know, feel free to add. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Todd. Any other questions? No further questions by the board. Mr. Skinner, you can now come forward and address the zoning board and give us whatever information you think would be useful to us. Yeah, there you go.
So that building was originally, I was told, by Talbot. Who had
Dave Talbot,
Perfection.
I think.
Yeah, they had Perfection Auto Body there for decades. It was originally the Suzuki dealer in the 60s, and then probably became Perfection Auto Body in the 70s. That's, anyways, it's a tidbit of information that you can, I think, the buildings on the right were added. I think originally it was just maybe that's the back one in the left, and that was the Suzuki dealer. I just wanted to share that. But beyond that, it's a lot cleaner than it was, when it transferred owners, so put a lot of work in it, getting it cleaned up.
Okay. Mr. Skinner, there are some recommended conditions of approval. Have you reviewed those?
Yeah, I read it.
And those are satisfactory to you?
Yeah, they're good.
Okay. And then we're talking about perhaps requiring you to screen your garbage. Would that be okay to do, as far as you're concerned?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I guess if there's a dumpster there, I don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, generally around Butte in industrial areas, their dumpsters sit somewhere. I don't
Yeah.
know where it sits, in an
Yeah.
alley or to the side. So I'm not sure how, if there's a dumpster is gonna
Okay.
be there or not, or if it's garbage, you can probably roll it inside.
Oh, that would be good. Yeah.
I'm not sure how much waste. Honestly, I don't know if there's gonna need to be, if it's just a residential roller, you can just probably roll inside, so.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
I don't think so unless there's any other questions.
No, I have no questions. Do any board members have any questions of Mr. Skinner?
Mr. Chairman, I think
Yes.
I want to know that staff made a recommendation that you may want to consider the operating hours, but we didn't recommend any operating hours. The thought process was that, sometimes businesses related to the construction industry start really early in the morning. Headlight businesses may wait for us friendly neighbors, so I just wanted to know that we had recommended that. Kind of left it open for the hours that discuss with that.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have any thoughts as to the hours you would like to be open so we can address that?
I mean, it's probably normal business hours, except, I mean,
Mhm.
there's gotta be exceptions, right? It's what
Sure.
has to be done, but
That's sort of-
primarily it would be normal business hours. I mean,
Yeah.
that would probably be more like 7 o'clock until, 6, right? I don't know what normal business hours are, but earlier for this is probably,
Mm-hmm.
probably not before 7.
It's, my understanding of it, it's not a particularly noisy business, is it?
No, it wouldn't
Okay.
be. There's a lot of storage going on. I think there's no fabrication or manufacturing, so
Okay.
it's kind of storage in and out. And
Okay.
yeah, it'd be pretty low activity.
All right. That sounds pretty good. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Now, is there anybody present that would care to speak in support of this application? Is there anybody present that would care to speak against the application? Hearing nobody, I'll close the public portion of this meeting and open it for board discussion. The conditions of approval on the back of the back page seem to be pretty straightforward. I don't know if we necessarily want to restrict them too much to hours of operation, kind of open-ended, but is your board consideration in that regard?
If we were gonna, I would recommend maybe not before 7 and not after 9. I mean, that's kind of,
That sounds pretty good to me, yeah.
And with the nature of that business, the winter months are generally slower than the summer, so, they wouldn't be working until 9 o'clock at night in the winter. The summertime is when you make hay, so I would I would be okay with 7 till, what is it, what'd you say?
9, just
9.
as, I agree, they would probably won't
Yeah.
operate that late, but it's,
And it certainly
Understood.
couldn't be any worse than it was.
It got to be pretty bad there at the
Yeah.
end. Yeah.
Todd, could you speak a little bit more about what you're thinking with the garbage screening?
Well, I don't know. If you look on the east side of that building, there's a 4-foot chain link fence in between that and the property to the east, which has a wooden fence there. And if you remember right, a number of years ago, that place was, the one with the wooden fence was just loaded with junk. And I don't know what transpired to get that cleaned up, but, you know, this property that we're talking about today, Talbot had all kinds of stuff in there, and it was a mess, inside the fence and out, and there was dead cars laying all over. I don't know if Mr. Skinner is gonna haul old garage doors to the dump or to the recycler or whatever, but if he does have a dumpster, you know, I don't wanna make a hardship for him, but every other special use or variance that we have that involves a commercial property, we tell them that they have to screen their garbage. So I'm just trying to be fair here and fair to the neighbors so they don't have to look at it. If you've just got a roll away like everybody else in town does, that's not hard to deal with.
No.
We're already looking at that. So I don't have a recommendation, but probably to keep that storage secure, you wouldn't want that open necessarily. So it would have to go in his parking area, either on one side of the business or the other, with just a simple chain link with maybe some slats or a wooden fence, just so it's kind of out of view, and make it easy for the garbage collectors to get in there to spear the thing and dump it.
Yeah. Probably just gets rolled out to the street anyway, like mine does.
Yeah, well, and you know, the larger bins,
The larger bins would have to be screened.
and some of those are on wheels, you know, they can wheel that out and just pick it up and dump it, wheel it back.
Yeah. Yeah, vinyl slats is an inexpensive way of dealing with that problem on the existing chain link fence.
Yeah.
So I can see that as a potential condition. Any other thoughts with regard to this?
Mr. Chairman, I can remember when that was the snowmobile dealership back in the 60s.
Oh.
And, you know, at that time, that business kept it very clean. And they did have a dumpster on the side. I think there's enough room in that property. If he wanted to just put a small, he wouldn't have to put a huge dumpster, but a small middle dumpster. Most of the garbage coming out of a garage door facility, I would think, would just be cardboard. For them to unwrap the garage door and take it to the site. Most of the work would be done on site when they install a door.
Right.
So there wouldn't be a lot of, you know, work being actually done in that facility, I don't believe.
I agree. Most of the work is done inside.
Mr. Chairman, a lot of times you know, if you take a garage door out, the homeowner really doesn't want it, and I'm sure that, you know, I don't know about Mr. Skinner, but I think that a lot of them will haul that away, and I don't know if they take them and put them in their own dumpster, if they recycle them or whatever, but, you know, I could see that as being, you know, quite a bit of trash. And, you know, if they stock them there, get a big pile and then haul them out on a trailer, that would be fine as well. But, you know, if they do have a rollaway or a trash bin dumpster that the truck has to pick up with the forks, it should be screened, just to be fair. And, you know, make it look good. I mean, that's part of what we're trying to do here is make everybody happy. And I don't think Mr. Skinner's against that. He can speak for himself.
Okay. Any other thoughts with regard to this matter and the conditions? Okay. We're now in position to proceed to written ballot, and we would need a motion for that purpose to be seconded by somebody.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that we approve variance application number 23000001 with conditions as written, and an additional condition that the garbage dumpster be screened, and also the hours of operation as discussed.
7 to 9?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does anybody care to second that? Mr. Craig?
I'd second that, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and seconded, and we can now vote on this matter. All 6 votes are for the motion, Mr. Skinner, so your application for a use variance has been approved, and you will be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect, and good luck with your business. Thank you. You bet. Thank you. So the next matter on our agenda is special use application 23 and 5 zeros and a 1 by Majorca and Wade. That be you, ma'am? Okay, thank you. Lila, you have the presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This presentation is for special use permit application 23-1. The proposal here is to rent out a 2-bedroom residence for overnight stays and short-term rentals through online hosted programs. Lodging provided by a homeowner for compensation is recognized as a special use allowed in any residential zoning district, provided that the prescribed use is in harmony with the other uses permitted in the zone and not contrary to public interest. Many of you know the process here, so I'll move on to the questions. Here's an aerial photograph. It's up on West Granite, and it's in an R3 zoning district. The property is an R3 district, and the home is a 2-bedroom, single-family home with a footprint of 2,686 square feet. Here's some pictures. Here's a picture looking east on Granite. It's located within an area which contains single-family and multifamily homes. Most of the lots are around 4,200 to 7,500 square feet. The parcels located across the alley are single-family and multifamily residential zones as well, or residential buildings as well. There have been no changes to the zoning ordinance in this area, and it's within the uptown edge place type in the comprehensive plan. In terms of fencing, screening, and landscaping, there is a fence. It's snowy now, but there are no proposed changes to landscaping or fencing. Proposed vehicle access, circulation, and parking. The access is provided via West Granite to the front of the residence for on-street parking, and then there's a carport to the west with 2 off-street parking spaces. The applicant has indicated that they do not intend to install signage, and the lighting in the area is typical to that of a residential neighborhood. All potential nuisances, one of them would be increased traffic in the neighborhood, but as long as the occupancy level of the residence is in conformance with the residential building code, it should not increase traffic. There is some available off-street parking, and again, if the applicants are limited to the occupancy level of the building, there should not be any more of a parking issue than if the house were inhabited long-term. For wayfinding, staff believes that the address should be clearly posted and visible from the street to mitigate the potential for guests to mistake a neighbor's home for the unit. And staff would also suggest that the owner enforces rules through online hosting programs to regulate noise. There are some other permits and reviews needed besides this one for a special use to have an Airbnb. One of them would be health department review and also building department review, which would look at the occupancy of the building. Staff believes that the proposed use is consistent with the intent of the zoning ordinance to allow for reasonable use of private property. The ordinance permits certain commercial uses to be located within all residential zones after review by this board. The special use application process was created to ensure that these types of businesses don't negatively impact adjacent residences. Anytime a commercial business encroaches into a residential neighborhood, there's potential for the use to negatively impact the surrounding property owners. In this case, when we consider the low impact commercial nature of the business and the owners limiting the number of occupants, staff feels that it would appear to have a minimal impact on adjacent properties and property owners. In conclusion, our analysis of the review criteria and any public opinion as it relates to the criteria, the board must determine if the applicant has presented evidence to satisfaction of the board that undue detriment will not result from the granting of a special use permit. Staff will refer the application to the board within 15 days of receipt of the application and all information, and within 60 days the board shall deny the application and give reason for denial in writing to the applicants, or approve the application, and the zoning officer shall issue a zoning compliance permit with conditions specified thereon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any board members have any questions of the staff? Okay. Ma'am, could you step forward and identify yourself and by giving your name and address?
My name is Lisa Wade, and my address is 848 Browns Meadow Road in Kyla, Montana, which is just outside of Kalispell. And I think she already gave the address of this house.
Okay. Do you have anything you would like to add to the presentation made by the staff?
Yeah, one minor correction. It's a 4-bedroom house, not a 2-bedroom house. So
Okay.
just a detail there. And I've read the potential conditions of approval, and we're comfortable with that. My husband, Renee, and I, we have short-term rentals right outside of Glacier National Park. And so we're very accustomed to enforcing the rules with our guests with respect to to occupancy limitations and noise. We have neighbors there as well and are accustomed to that, and we've done that for the last several years. And we don't plan to do any more remodeling. This house has been a labor of love for the last few years. We've been remodeling it pretty extensively. And we've learned a lot. We were in the URA grant district area, and so we learned a lot about the historical preservation aspects. And it we've lived in it, the house ourselves, and it's currently has some long-term tenants in there, or maybe midterm you would call them. They're nurses, but their contract will be done in June, and the intent for us would be to do this occasionally, not continually.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks.
Any board members have any questions of the applicant? Mr. Collins?
Yeah, we do. We have quite a few contacts in Butte. My husband and myself and my brother all went to school at Montana Tech, and through the remodeling process, we encountered multiple different contractors, plumbers and electricians that we have now available to us in the event that there needs to be ever an emergency repair. And we also have a gentleman that lives a few blocks away that checks on the house for us regularly. We also spend a fair amount of time in Butte, but when we're not here, he's available to us, and we've had a conversation with him to make sure he'd be willing to help us out manage this in the event it's necessary.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions by any board members?
Yeah, similar to Todd's question, you mentioned managing, the occupancy and such. How do you intend to do that?
So when for example, on our other properties, when we first started, we did have this happen where people would sneak in additional guests because then they split the cost, and but we found that it's best to put everything very clear up front. So before the person even has tried to rent our property, they have to agree to our house rules. And one of the house rules there not only clearly states the occupancy limit, but we actually state the fine that we would fine the guest, and it's a pretty steep fine. We fine them $125 per person per night, and we clearly state that. And since we started stating that at the beginning, before the person has even booked the accommodation, for example, we've not had any problems with that. Just to be clear with them at the beginning has saved us a lot of headaches. So we would propose to do the same thing here to avoid that issue.
Thank you. What is your occupancy limit anticipated to be for this property?
That's a good question. It's 4 bedrooms, and I would say between 6 and 8 people. We'll go through the public accommodations application, and I know when we've done this in the past, well, it was a little bit different in the past because we had a limitation with our septic tank, and this is on municipal system, but we worked that out with our reviewer at the time of the public accommodation license, which I'm imagining would be the same here in Silver County. So anyway, my best guess would be between 6 and 8 people, probably closer to 6, but
Okay.
yeah,
Just curious.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Okay, you can have a seat. I'm going to check and see if there's anybody present that would care to speak in support of this application. Hearing nobody, I'll ask if there's anybody present that would care to speak against the application. Hearing nobody, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and open it for board discussion. This is one of those matters where we have up to 60 days to decide, but typically we've been deciding them on the night that they're presented. Is everybody comfortable with making a decision tonight?
I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any thoughts about this? It looks like they've done a great job with the property, as best I can tell.
Yeah, the property looks great. I did drive by there, Mr. Chairman, and it looks like for 6 or 8, if you had 4 cars there, because it's on a corner, there's probably going to be ample parking, and I think there's a pad out in the back, if I'm not, is there a garage back there, Lila? Yeah. Yeah, so I don't think the parking is gonna be as big of a bone of contention as it would be if it was down on, West Mercury or somewhere like that, so, I think it's a good fit.
I agree. Any other comments or concerns? Does anybody care to make a motion with regard to this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we approve this 23-00001, excuse me.
Anybody care to second that motion?
I'll
With-
second.
With conditions? Just to
Subject
clarify.
to the conditions, which she's already indicated
Right,
that
she's already,
are acceptable to her.
Yep, so moved.
Almost asked you for another ballot, Robin, but I found it. Thank you. No, I'm okay now. Thank you, Lauren. Thanks, John. All 6 votes are for the motion, ma'am, which means that your application for a special use permit has been approved, and you'll be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect. And good luck with your project. Is there anything further to consider tonight?
Mr. Chairman, there's no other business.
Okay, thank you. Meeting will therefore be adjourned.